Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Quo Vadis Podcast. The Catholic podcast helps you begin with the end in mind. I am Taylor.
You still are.
He is Father.
I still
Mark.
am.
I still am.
I still am?
I still am. That's still me. It's kind of an odd saying, like, once you say I still am. I feel like that's not really a full sentence.
No, I mean, it's got a subject and a verb.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Look at you, English nerd.
We had the Duke and Altum silent retreat in Milwaukee a little ways ago.
Yeah.
And I celebrated one of the masses, and I was preaching, and I forget the point, but I said it was meant to be an English
point of your own preaching.
No, well, I guess I don't know in this particular one what I was trying to do. The reason I bring this story up is because I meant to make the point that I'm not an English major.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not a math major. I guess, well, I'm not that either, I guess. But that's when you were saying you were complimenting on the English. I said, yeah. I forgot why I said I was not. What I meant to say, I'm not an English major, but I said I'm not a math major. I'm not either of those.
Is that what they call a Freudian slip, where you're like, it just slipped out on accident? Like, you're like,
well,
I'm not a math major. Well,
but I always thought like a Freudian slip means like when you say something, but it's, you say it, but it's actually not true what you said. Like,
I've always thought that the Freudian slip was like you said the thing that's actually true, but like you didn't mean to say it out loud, kind of a thing. You know, like if I was talking to you and be like, oh yeah, well I actually really don't like that shirt. I mean, I really like that shirt, kind of thing. You know, it's like that. That's kind of the Freudian slip, I suppose. But yeah. Look at us hashing out things like intelligent people.
Here it came to me. I know why.
Oh, all right.
Because I was talking about possessive pronouns, I believe. Okay. So the particular reading talked about like my heart. So like the my part, I said I believe is a possessive pronoun. I said I'm not a math major. That's what I said. Yep.
That's so much funnier when you put it in context like that.
Well, it took me a bit. I'm like, I don't know. That was a couple days ago. Like,
yeah.
I don't remember my homilies.
Yeah, that's really funny.
That's what it was. It all comes back.
How long? I mean, so when you have a silent retreat like that and you have to write a homily, like, do you write it like the day before, or is it more of like a thing that you're practicing for a while because it's on a retreat and like you want to drive a point home? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I didn't write that out because it was a Friday night. So in my mind, like, it's a daily mass.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, I had a few different points to make, but my brain is still good that I didn't have to kind of write it down. And I think I said everything I wanted to say. So, I mean, no, certainly prayed over it because there's something about retreat. I think that hopefully the soul's just a little more attuned to the Lord. So guys are just hopefully a little more honed in, a little more focused. So that was the beginning of the retreat, though. So, we were just entering into the silence. So
when you go on a silent retreat, do you get very sleepy?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Maybe I just need to be in silence more because I know, like, I haven't been on silent retreat in some years now. I should probably go again. But whenever I did, I was like, man, I just want to keep taking naps. Like, I was just like so tired.
Well, I do take naps.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously.
But I don't know if I get like, it's more just like, okay, it's something to do, as opposed to like, I am just pooped.
I'm just sitting here. Yeah, I don't know. I just remember that. I remember actually the guy who runs the website called The Art of Manliness. I think we mentioned that on the podcast before because I would surprise me.
Shout out if you want to sponsor us.
It was it surprised me if I haven't mentioned them.
We haven't gotten a sponsor request.
No, we haven't gotten a sponsor request. But anyway, he the guy who runs it, he was a part of like some like great books club or something like that. It's kind of what him and his friends were doing. And apparently, at one point, they were working their way through St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa. I think they were actually like reading the Summa a little bit. And so part of their reading of it was that they then took a retreat at a Dominican monastery somewhere I think he's from Tulsa, so I think somewhere in kind of in that western region. And he said that when he was on it was basically a silent retreat, and he was talking about how sleepy he found himself. Like, he couldn't believe how many naps he was taking and how tired he was like that, and something about entering into the silence was just like this, like, oh, I guess I'm just slowing down. Oh, wow, I'm tired, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I suppose
I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Artificial go kind of a thing, of the lights and the caffeine and all that kind of stuff. It just kind of makes you go.
The lights
wake you up.
Oh, I guess
that's one of the most.
Well, I just didn't know if you were
things.
talking about this guy was like, he's just, he's just in front of people all the time, just like, oh, the lights are just,
Actually, I don't think he's I don't think he does like any speaking engagements. I think it's kind of one of those things that he said no. But anyway, yeah. But you need lights now more than ever, now that it's dark in January. It's been very
Indeed, but it's
dreary.
getting, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's getting lighter
I suppose it's getting lighter.
every day.
I suppose that is true. I should probably pay more attention to that as opposed to focusing on the darkness sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a life lesson there.
Indeed. Perhaps there might be a homily in that.
If you give a homily today about that, I'm going to be a little miffed. I want some credit.
Well, I've got 2 opportunities today, so we'll see what happens.
That's what I want to hear. Well, speaking of the light shining in our lives, we had a revelation just, I believe it was just not that long ago.
Like less than 24 hours ago?
Where
Perhaps.
You asked me, you're like, Taylor, have I done a podcast on my vocation story? And I was like, no. I mean, like, I think like we've heard bits and pieces of it, like as like we've heard some of the other vocation stories. I think you've kind of shared like, oh, that's kind of similar to, you know, this experience or a thought I
probably
had early
interjected
on
a
and
little
that
bit.
kind of stuff. Yeah, you know, but never like the full Father Mark Mleziva, Father Mark Clement Mleziva vocation story. So that's what we're gonna do today. So you're gonna tell us your vocation story. So
yes, sir.
So I mean, as I say to all the guests, we're here to share the vocation story. Take us where you would like to begin when it comes to your vocation story.
Probably should have been more prepared for this because hearing that all the time, you know, because
Yeah.
the full vocation story is hard to do in the limited time that we have, but I think we'll be able to.
You don't just ruminate on
this.
it all day. You're not just thinking about your vocation story all the time.
No,
No.
but I do enjoy giving, just in the sense it's just a good reminder to me how the Lord has worked in my life and just the gratitude that comes from that. So perhaps I should do that more for that, but here we stand.
Here we stand.
And by that I mean sitting. And let's begin.
Wow, this is really epic.
It was in October.
Bum, 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 bum.
No, to be honest, I usually start with my family just to describe, because usually when I give this presentation, it's usually kind of high schoolers, you know, faith formation, that type of thing. I usually show them a picture of my family. The reason being is to show that, one, they exist. And, well, here's the thing, like, you laugh because I don't think people always recognize, like, priests come from families.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, odds are they probably have siblings, and they probably followed those siblings growing up, and you know, maybe they weren't always perfect, I guess. But I show that because, like I said, it's just, I think I don't know, like, what do you think? They just like walked out of the woods one day, like, oh, we got another one, we got one. You know, it's like trying to catch them as they.
I feel like what's usually surprising to people is when priests have siblings, and not so much like parents, but have siblings. You know, like you're like, oh, this is my brother, and you're like, you have a brother?
Yeah,
you know, like that's usually kind of the.
What does he call you? My name.
My name. So you show them a picture of your family to say, this is where I've come from.
Yeah. And so just I kind of point them out. I mean, so I was the second of 4. So there were 3 boys, and then my lovely sister at the end, who got everything she ever wanted. Her own room, a newer car. We never had new cars because my father was a mechanic. I guess still is. He's retired. So you might think like, oh, he's a mechanic. I was like, no. The cars we had, like, just kind of ran.
They
worked.
They worked.
You know, not flashy, not new. But she got the newest of not new, but the newest.
You're definitely not still bitter about that.
No. Well, here's the thing though. Well, it's another thing. There's like siblings. You gotta love them, right?
Yeah,
I go to study abroad, right? So I don't need a vehicle. I bought this 2000 Chevy Malibu, light tan was the color, I believe. Huh. I mean, there's an actual color. You know, they're all like, it's like sandstone, or you know, it's like some fancy name, right? And so I don't need it. So my brother, like, well, you know, he can use it. And so what does he do? He drops the transmission on it and trades it in for a newer vehicle. I have still not seen any compensation for my 2000 Chevy Malibu. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it was probably only worth a couple $100. However, so now I just aired my grievance out loud.
It was a lesson in detachment, you know?
Oh, for sure. It's like, I bought that car. I'm like, you traded it in? Like,
and then this was your brother, not your sister.
No,
I
guess my brother.
Okay, yeah, that's what I made clear.
Do I have a grievance against my older brother? I probably do, but let's just move on, shall we? Let's just turn into, like, people just start, I'm like, I don't want to listen to all this. Like, I got siblings. I don't need to hear about his problems with his siblings. So
Father Mark's vocation story was just him yelling at his family the whole time. That was weird.
but there were the six of us, the four kids and my two parents. So as I usually describe, I say that we grew up in a very average Catholic family. And I usually ask, well, what do you mean by that? So we did go to Mass every weekend. We just did. It really wasn't something we fought our parents on. We more or less probably fought about getting ready on time. We were always a 4 o'clock Saturday vigil Mass family. Why? I don't know. But that was just
what
the time.
you did.
Like I said, the biggest fight was sort of like, I saw my mom kind of just like hollering at us. She didn't really holler, but like I just kind of share that was part of the story. Like, okay, you have to shower. Like it's your turn. You get 10 minutes. Like I just remember like always like this is like your 10-minute shower slot, and that was it.
You know, a timer. Timer goes off.
Well,
hot water turns off.
It's like you're done.
Get out of there.
so usually about 2:30 or so, we'd be sort of kind of getting the gentle nudge to clean up. So be ready on time. So we would go to Mass, like I said, every weekend, mostly on Saturday. We all served, all of us siblings. We served, which I always enjoyed. Not that one's not doing something by being in the pews praying. Of course they are. But there was just something, I guess, I don't know, like energetic, lack of focus young boy. It's like, all right, here, play with fire, light these candles, hold this book.
Give him a task. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was
Did your brothers serve with you too, or is it just you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And we actually grew up in two home parishes, so we served at both, and they were slightly different in how they were. But I always enjoyed that bit, and like I don't know, just the dumb things you do, like like putting the candles up with just your fingers. You kind of just like gob some spit on your fingers and kind of
Wait, so who got you into serving? Who asked you to serve? Was it your parents? Was it the parish priest who was like, hey, your boy should serve, and your parents were like, yep. And kicked you into the sacristy and said, I think, have fun?
Well, part of it, I was going to Catholic school at the time.
Oh, okay.
When I was old enough to serve. So I should have mentioned, so I grew up south of Luxembourg. So Luxembourg's, maybe 20 minutes east of Green Bay. So we grew up out in the country. But we went to Catholic grade school. So there was just sort of the understanding, I guess. I think it was 5th grade you could start to serve, though. Jordan Shia and I served in 4th grade.
Whoa!
Because all the older kids had gone to Bay Beach for the day, so there was nobody else to serve. So here we go. We got called into duty.
You were called in 4th grade.
Indeed.
Like that.
Well, it was in the end of the year because I remember it was like sort of their. That was always kind of a neat thing. That was their
the
reward
the
for singing and doing all this stuff at church, and so they got to go to Bay Beach.
That's
anyway,
cool.
So it was just sort of like the understanding, like everyone just kind of served type of thing, and then people kind of like trail off in regards to like didn't want to do it anymore. I actually served until I was a senior in high school. I mean, through my senior year and everything. So because I still enjoyed doing it. It was a task. And so I just did that. So that was probably a huge part of my story, and just kind of the closeness to the altar, closeness to the priest and the Eucharist. That certainly had a big impact. So, but we went to church. I served. We were all kind of involved. My dad lectured. My mom would sell script and all that other stuff that just volunteer stuff.
So you guys were there late after Mass then.
Yeah, but here's the thing that we were kind of like messing around, like putting candles out with our fingers.
Sure.
So, I mean, so we're like, we kind of took our time too. So I can't hold everything, but then we would do prayer as a family, not like a huge thing, but we'd pray before meals. I always remember in Lent, that's when my mom would make us pray the rosary on Sundays. So we'd have to like kneel down. Like, why do we have to kneel? This is the word. We're kneeling on like carpet. It's not even. It's like hardwood or anything. I mean, she's not a monster, but I still remember complaining. But it was one of those things I look back now. I'm very grateful for that we did that. So we didn't pray a ton together, but just those little things, like I said, the prayer before meal, kind of before we go to bed when we were younger, and then I can remember the rosary during Lent.
Fondly, obviously.
Fondly. So growing up, the faith was a part of my life, but it wasn't like the sole focus or a huge part of it. I think part of it too is because growing up, I mean, most of my friends were Catholic. And if they weren't, they were oftentimes Lutheran. So we were all Christian, and as far as I remember, we were all practicing. So it's sort of like it wasn't a big deal type of thing. But like I said, I mean, serving was a big thing. I enjoyed that. I might just share this one brief story because I thought my serving career might have been cut short because on some occasions we would utilize the incense. So the thurible, that's the name of the device, the contraption. That puts forth the incense. So essentially, it's a piece of metal on a chain, And I was chosen to be
hot flaming ball inside.
Indeed. I was chosen to be the thurifer that day, and because there was no deacon at the offertory, you incense the priest. It's a triple double. So you kind of go 1 2, 1 2 1 2. There's your triple double, right? Well, I got a little zesty on the one swing, so to speak, and I hit Father Cease in the hands with the thurible.
Did you burn him?
Well, he didn't. He took it like a man because he took it like a champ. He didn't. And he wasn't like or anything, like nothing.
Nothing.
He just took it. I'm just like my first. I'm like, I'm going to hell.
This is it. Signed, sealed, delivered.
I'm just like,
struck a priest.
Oh my goodness, I could not believe that. And I'm just mortified the whole rest of the mass. I'm young or whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh. So like we get through the mass. I'm like just terrified to go back into the sacristy. And like, you know what he said to me?
What?
Nothing.
Not
a word.
Let it go, huh?
Well, like, what do you have to say? Like, in the future, could you not do that?
You probably learned your lesson in the moment. Yeah.
It's just like, I think like my whole angst the rest of the day was probably punishment enough type of thing. So funny enough, at his retirement party, I asked him if he remembered that. And he said no.
Really?
Are you kidding me? I was just
this
like,
is a formative moment in
I'm
my
like,
life.
I'm pretty sure if anybody hit me with a thurible, like I would probably, I don't know what I would do.
Maybe
I would remember. I'd probably remember.
Maybe when that happens to you, you'll have to tell that young man that's exactly what happened to you, and then now
I'd be
he's
like,
gonna be called the priest.
I was gonna say like, I would smile if I got hit with it because like, you're gonna be a priest. This is great. I'll take the burn.
I'm looking forward to your ordination, buddy. See you there.
Pat him on the head, So, but yeah. So, like I said, the serving and all that. So I went to Catholic grade school, and like I said, a huge part of it was was uncommon at the time, and becoming less uncommon, but still relatively. We went to mass every single day. So that's just how we began every single day. We'd walk over to the church, 8:00 mass. Like I said, nothing we fought or nothing. It was like, or anything. It was just sort of like, that was just
what you did.
That was just part of it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we would serve. We'd take turns singing in the choir, going up in the choir loft and all that stuff, lecturing, and all that stuff. So, like I said, looking back, it had to have a huge, huge impact. Kind of looking forward. So, go through elementary school. It went up to 6th grade for whatever reason, and then you went to the public school. Right? So it was kind of funny. Somebody asked me, like, did you not want to go to, like, a Catholic middle school or Catholic high school like this? I don't really remember being asked or if that was something my folks really thought about. I mean, where we were, Roncalli, I mean, probably a good 40 minutes away.
Easily, yeah.
Notre Dame, the west side of Green Bay, 30 plus probably. So I don't know, but it was a good school, Luxembourg Casco. I assume it still is. Hope it still is. But as we went to middle school, like I said, I mean, even though it was a public school, everyone was pretty Christian, whether Catholic or Lutheran, and so it wasn't a huge deal. Once again, this sort of the theme in the sense like the faith was there, but it wasn't like a huge part of it. And so as I went through middle school and then went into high school, kind of all those things what comes with the high school experience. So I played sports in middle school and high school as well. I was never outstanding. But I played football, basketball, and baseball. So I knew this was not going to lead to anything. I guess we'll put it that way, type of thing. So, but I played all those sports. I was involved. I was in the band. We were set out to make the band cool, which I'm not sure if we did, but we certainly tried.
A noble effort,
indeed. Someone had to take up the flag, take up the banner. So, but I played drums, so that was a huge part of it. Then I also did some of the backstage stuff too for like the musicals and the variety shows. So I did the riggings, like the ropes and all that stuff. Yeah. So I like to think I was fairly involved in a couple different areas. So, but like I said, like the faith once again. So for instance, football. So I played football. Like we would pray as a team before the game, which is like you think, it's a public school. It was in the locker room, so it's like we were doing it like publicly out on the field, but. Kind of the special teams, the specialists would go out, the punters, kickers, receivers, all that stuff. But like I remember we would get together and we would say an Our Father, everybody, and then we'd say Hail Mary and Glory Be, and then you knew who was Catholic. So, but it was one of those things. Like I said, it wasn't the faith it's not totally foreign to the environment type of thing. So, but I did date in high school. I had a couple of relationships, as much as those could be serious ones. But I think I had 3 different girlfriends. I think I got dumped by all of them, except the last one was on me, I suppose. But so anyway, but that was kind of part of the experience as well. It was dating. So priesthood was never a thought at this time. Mm-hmm. I never thought about the priesthood. Like I said, I mean, I was certainly Catholic and doing all those things, but it just was never a thought. I mean, the assumption was, and it's not a bad, like, I'm not saying like it's a default type of thing, but I mean, certainly had a desire to be married, to be a husband, to be a father. All these plans were kind of coming together, especially as I was graduating high school and, moving into college. So as I graduated, I knew I wanted to go to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So ever since I was a little one, I'd always gone to one Badger football game a year. So all my dad's brothers, so all my uncles on my dad's side, except my father, went to Madison for some sort of schooling. Oh. So one went to law school, one went to veterinary school, or at least the preparation for that. One became an agronomist, soil science.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And two of them they had like these farm short courses. I think those are still there actually. So like two-year things.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So anyway, we were always just kind of in that environment, in that atmosphere. So like I said, I grew up with it. I'm like, yeah, this is where I want to go. It's a good school. I was a huge Badger fan. Yeah. I mean, like, this was in high school. I think I wore, like, somebody like, how much Badger stuff do you have? I'm like, I don't know. People always gave it to me as a gift. I think I wore like a different piece of Badger clothing, like shirt, for like a whole month. This was like, someone like challenged me on it. It was and I'm like, yep. So I just like, it was about a month that I like everything. So anyway, I've since
big fan.
Downsized. I don't wear a whole lot of Badger shirts.
You didn't get custom clerical shirts that have Bucky Badger on it somewhere? No.
So the thing was like, well, how am I going to get there? So obviously you have to apply and everything. So which I did. And it was kind of, I mean, I was accepted. It was kind of a buzzkill though, because they give you like, I got this envelope sent to me, like a big like packet thing, 8.5 by 11. And like on the backside, all it said was like, yes, ! So sort of like,
you didn't even get the thrill of opening it to see it yet.
It's like, I was happy certainly, but it's just sort of like, oh, well, I guess that kind of, there you go. So, but the part of it is like, well, how am I going to pay for it? It's not like my folks said like, we're not going to pay for anything, but I think it was just sort of the understanding that we had been working when I was in high school, wash dishes. There was the races in Luxembourg, so we used to clean the grandstand, which was not a very great job.
It doesn't sound like fun.
Well, it's just like the combination of like nacho cheese, tobacco, beer, like all together. It's just like, it's not like.
That's so gross.
I know. My uncle was managing them at the time, so we kind of got roped into it. So we used to find some money and stuff like this in the pits and a bunch of tools and all that stuff. So anyway, so there were some perks to it. But anyway, so how am I going to pay for this? So there was something at the local golf course called the Evans Scholarship. So I won't bore with the details, but long story short, there was a very good golfer by the name of Charles Evans. His nickname was Chick. It was Chick Evans. So
Chick Evans.
He was an amateur golfer, which means like a step below a professional. That means he wasn't bad, but it's just sort of like professionals golfers, like that's their full time. Like amateurs can do stuff, but do other stuff as well. But he had won the U.S. Open, the U.S. Amateur in the same year, so he was making a lot of money. So in order to, with all the winnings, all the earnings, he had to become a professional golfer because he was making so much. Wow. So as a way to remain at an amateur status, he put some of his money aside for poor caddies to go to college.
Wow.
Yeah, so it became what's called the Evans Scholarship. So there was this program going on at the local golf course at Northbrook. And so my mother, who had been working it, they're still working there, probably will be working there for many years anyway, told me about it. So I started to caddy as well in high school in hopes of getting this scholarship. So part of it was sort of your sort of academic, skill, what you were involved with, extracurriculars, your caddying, obviously you had to do that. But then part of it too is like financial need. So it's not like you had to be poor, but I mean, we were, middle class, whatever it is. So my folks made below the threshold to qualify for it. So I actually earned this scholarship, this golf caddy scholarship, which paid for 4 years at Madison.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was sort of like, this will go to my conversation when I felt called and I reached out to Father Schuster, the vocation director at the time. He's just like, I was actually in Madison for 5 years getting my education degree, but he's like, well, how much debt do you have? 5 years of Madison. Well, actually, I don't have any debt. He's like, well, did you have like a scholarship? Well, I did. He's like, well, was it like an academic or something? Because he didn't go to athletic. He didn't say that. But I said, well, actually, it's kind of more of an athletic one, perhaps.
Is there something about me that makes you think I didn't earn an athletic scholarship, Father Schuster?
I know. So, but no, I explained it to him. I said I had this a golf caddy scholarship. It's like, what? Like, Yeah, so it
That's
paid
a
for
thing?
it.
Yeah.
That's a thing. So
That's a thing.
so I got my acceptance to Madison, and I got a way to be there with this Evans scholarship. So when I first showed up there, I loved political science. I had an awesome political science teacher in high school, in freshman year, Mr. Bartell. I just really enjoyed it. We did a lot of current events and like how government works and all that stuff. I was just kind of intrigued by it, and so I always kind of liked the social studies, but I thought, like, well, this might be something good. And it's like, here I'm going to the Capitol, right? You're sort of the center of all of it. Well, it didn't take long for me to realize, like, I don't want to do this. Because you're sort of in the belly of the beast. It's sort of like, I don't know about that, But I really liked the subject. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try to become a teacher, a social studies teacher with focus on political science. So I kind of switched my major as much as, kind of at the beginning, you're just taking whatever it is. Right. So, but I kind of switched over to secondary education, social studies. As I entered Madison, I was dating a gal at the time. We had dated through high school, into the summer, into college. She was at a different university, a good ways away from Madison, and we didn't have vehicles. We did have cell phones, but these were in the days of like the old. I had like a poor man's Razor. Do you remember the Razor?
I
like
do.
the
I
flip
loved
phone?
the Razor. I think it was so cool.
Yeah, the Motorola. And this was like a poor man's. It was a UT Starcom. I still remember. Like that was the brand.
I think I remember
that was the brand or
Starcom,
whatever. Yeah. So we could talk to people, but texting was a bear because before the T9 thing, you had to do the whole like.
Also cost 10 cents a text.
Whatever it is. Yep.
The kids these days don't know the struggles.
They have no idea. They say T9. They have no. You know what T9 is?
Yeah.
Just checking. So anyway, so we did our best, but I think it was just hard, the distance, and essentially we just kind of split apart or whatever. And that's just kind of how things went. But then, like I said, I just continued on. Now, when I was at Madison, I'll keep this sort of PG. But long story short, I wasn't exactly a saint when I was in Madison. Kind of fell into the party scene and all that. Not terribly, but enough type of thing. Right. But sort of the big question, of course, was, as I said before, my faith was a part of me, but it wasn't like a huge part. This was sort of the question because as I went to college, I think my parents encouraged me to go to Mass. In my heart, I always knew like I'm going to go to Mass because it's what you do type of thing. And so I did. There was a wonderful, and it's still there, and it's awesome. St. Paul's on campus there at Madison. So that's where I went to Mass. It was very hard though because I didn't really have anybody else with me. There was other people I was living in. We had this scholarship house. Those I got the Evans scholarship. We lived together. It wasn't a house. It was sort of like a mini dorm. There was, it had occupancy for like 72 people. Okay. So it was a good amount. We just called it the house. But I knew there were Catholics in the house, at least they said. But when I would encourage them to go to Mass, it was usually like, I got to study, stuff. Sure. It's like, well, it's just
the
an
usual
hour, typically, And so that was the hardest thing. And oftentimes when I tell like seniors going to college, like if you can find somebody to go with you, it just makes it infinitely easier.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just very bittersweet because it was bitter in the sense I was kind of there by myself, kind of a loner. We did have opportunities to get connected there, but I just didn't really do so. But it was sweet in the sense like I knew it was good to be there type of thing. I usually would miss my family then because we did a pretty good job of going to Mass together as a family. Sure. So in that moment when you're just kind of by your own, it's like, okay. So I continued to go to Mass, but there was just a lot of confessions. They had confessions a half hour before every Mass for I think obvious reasons. They still do. So it's I utilized that often. So it was sort of the struggle. It's like I knew I wasn't exactly doing the best stuff, but I kept coming back to the Lord for mercy, and it was always there, which was wonderful. So just to jump ahead a little bit, everything changed for me my sophomore year. And so it was in the spring semester. At that point, you're kind of getting into your classes, your major. I mean, a little bit of you're kind of out of the 100 level classes. Yeah. You're starting to get into a little bit more in-depth things, getting your credits and all those things. And I was kind of known. So at the time, you'd have these rooms. You'd usually have a couple of roommates. So you'd have sort of like a sitting room and then your sleeping room type of thing. So we were in the largest room. So it actually like housed 5. So there were 5 of us. And amongst them, I was kind of referred to as the old fart because what that doesn't sound shocking. Right. That doesn't sound right. It's like, but believe it or not, I was because I was always the first one to go to bed for the evening, and I would usually go to bed right around midnight. So
wow,
I know.
Wow, so early.
I know.
Unbelievable.
I know. So at least in my
It
mind,
makes me so tired thinking about that
I
right
know,
now.
right?
That's why
I
I'm
don't
getting
even
old.
think like they thought of like staying up till midnight, just like oh. But anyway, but the reason I share that is because I would usually be the first one in the sleeping room then, and the other guys would be in the other room. They'd usually still be playing video games. Super Smash Brothers was our
it's a great
game of choice.
Great game.
It's a great game,
Yeah.
you know. And I thought it was pretty good for the amount I played. I didn't nearly play as much as they did, but I could usually hold my own. But anyway, but the reason I say is because they were all there. I was in the room by myself, and that was kind of the nice thing is I didn't have to worry about somebody snoring and stuff like that. I would go down. But as I went to bed that night, that's just when everything changed for me. And like I said, the spring semester of my sophomore year. So as I was going to bed, it's kind of hard to describe this. Usually what I try to do is like, if our listeners are listening, why don't you close your eyes? Unless you're driving, don't do that. But if you close your eyes, even though your eyes are closed, you still know where you are. You still have a sense of your surroundings, presumably. You know, you would still know, even though you can't see. Well, as I went to bed that night, of course, as you close your eyes, I lost sense of my surroundings. I wasn't really conscious of where I was. I felt like all I really was conscious of was just in my mind. Like that's just where I was, only just didn't really know where I was. And just very quietly, very calmly, but very clearly, I heard these words just within my mind audibly say, Mark, I want you to be a priest. And so I kind of like open my eyes, sort of come to, and once again remember where I am, or not remember. I can like, I'm conscious of where I am. But that was something. Like I said, up until that point, I never really heard voices quite like that. I haven't heard any since. As far as I knew, I was not nuts, because at least I got into Madison and it says something, But all I knew was I knew what I heard. It was very clear, and I knew it did not come from me.
Yeah.
So long story short, I didn't really sleep well that night for whatever reason, because I wasn't sure if like more was coming, and it was just something that really struck me to the heart, because it's just like, as I said before, I never really thought about the priesthood, and I just, it's like, no, no, I sort of had my plan. As I said, I wanted to be a teacher. Plan was to married, have kids. I was hoping to coach because I'd done a little bit of, played sports. There's maybe hopefully a way to get in to a high school somewhere. In the summers, I was going to work on a golf course. I've been caddying. I've been working in the summers, maintenance. I'm like, that was sort of my plan. Of course, priesthood didn't fit into that. Right. So as I just like, it's a nice thought, and we'll just leave it at that. And so I just tried to forget about it. And as much as I tried to forget about it, I couldn't. It was just always this little tug. It wasn't like overwhelming, just always this tug on my heart. And as I would continue to go to Mass, which I did, it was sort of like this internal question would be, could I see myself doing that up there at the altar? And as much as I wanted that answer to be no, it was sort of like, it was like exasperation. Sort of like, I could see myself perhaps doing that.
Yeah.
And so long story short, I kind of progressed. I didn't tell anybody, and this is maybe the one thing I want to share. Is usually part of my story is like, I didn't share this with anybody because I was so concerned what other people were going to think. If I told somebody I was going to, I think the Lord's calling to be a priest, I'd be like, what? I was so concerned of other people's opinion and what they would think about that. So like I said, tried to put it out. I didn't tell anybody, really good till I got the end of my time in college. So I was there for 5 years because I got accepted to the School of Education as a senior, and it was a 2-year program. So that's why. My 5th year I stayed on as the resident advisor for the house. So they let me live there for free, and they gave me a stipend for doing it. So I didn't have to move, but I was sort of like, I was in charge of all these.
Yeah, all the knuckleheads.
All the knuckleheads. So it's very like, you have to kind of mature at that point. So anyway, but it got to the end of my time. It's like, it still hadn't left me. So I went and spoke to my parish priest. He's the one I knew all my time there, Father Cease at St. Mary's in Luxembourg, and set up a time to meet. And I kind of just like, shared the story with him.
And he was the first one you shared that with?
Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of publicly to go into more in depth. And like, I just remember sharing the story, sitting in the room, and he just kind of nodding his head, and he's just like, that's nice. I remember being like, what? like that's it. Now the man was probably in his 70s at that point. Like I didn't expect him to like hop up on the coffee table and be like,
sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was just sort of like, okay. And he's like, now you need to talk to the vocation director. I'm like, come again? Like, what is that? He's like, there's this priest at like house. His name is Father Dan Schuster. You need to talk to him. I'm like, but I just talked to you. Like, what do you mean? Like, I was so green. I had no idea. So long story short, I met with Father Schuster and, just kind of laid it all out type of thing. I said like, he went through some of these questions, like, how much debt do you have? Well, no, because I was this. He's like, well, did you like make money at all? Did you work? I said, actually, I did. Oh, what did you do? Well, I worked at a sorority. Come again? So a lot of these sororities had in-house kitchens, so we were the kitchen help. So we do the dishes and put out the food. We didn't cook it; there was a cook, but we got to eat for free. And then usually I would take leftovers the next day. I don't know if that was approved or not, but here's like either I take leftovers the next day and I eat it, or like I dump it in 2 days because those gals wouldn't eat leftovers. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm not gonna waste it. So that's how I kind of. But long story short, you kind of put me on the path. So like I said, for my own discernment, it was sort of like. It wasn't like, is he calling me? Is he not calling me? It seemed pretty clear that it was a call. It was more just like me being open to that, which took some time. Like I said, it was 3 years before I really looked into it again because the tug just remained. So I met with Father Schuster, it's sort of like, okay, he kind of walked with me for the spring semester of my last year. And I applied. And 2 years I spent in Milwaukee studying philosophy, which was wonderful. I loved my time there. I was asked to study abroad in Rome, which I did for 4 years. Came back. I was ordained a priest in 2017. I spent my first priest assignment at St. Francis of Assisi Parish in Manitowoc, as well as chaplain at Roncalli High School.
Yeah, part-time, right?
Yep. I was there 3 days a week and for various times. And so it's sort of the funny thing because, as I said, I wanted to be a high school teacher. And the Lord, as I studied and prepared for all that, here I was in my first assignment. That was part of my priestly assignment, was to be assigned to a high school. And I've really kind of ever been in the high school setting ever since, because I'm the chaplain at St. Mary Catholic High School. Yeah. Go Zephyrs. And so it's one of those things. So just to kind of bring this all up, because I've talked a while here, it's just sort of the Lord is very funny. In the sense, I went from so adamant that I didn't want to be a priest. So now, I love being a priest. I really cannot imagine doing anything else. It's not like, the Lord called me to this, so that's the beauty of it. But I love being a priest. And so I went from, I never want to be one to I love being one. And now my role is to help young men think about and pray about if the Lord's calling them as well. So that's just sort of the irony in the midst of all this. But that's sort of it. So like I said, my conclusion is always like, if you're worried about what other people are going to think, just reach out to somebody, talk to somebody. Obviously that's my role to accompany, but there's other people to accompany, campus ministers, pastors, all these things. But here's the thing. If the Lord's calling you to it, it's what's going to lead you to holiness first and foremost. But there's also going to be a lot of happiness. And as I look at you, as a husband and father, are you happy as a husband and father? Oh, yeah. Of course you are. Right? Super. Is it easy?
Nope.
No. Well,
a little bit.
Not, priesthood isn't either. And it's not a comparison, but the reason I share this is like the cross is still going to be there, but that's meant to help us to grow in that holiness, and the happiness is there. So why discern a vocation? Because it's God's will for you. But once again, that's what's going to lead you to holiness. It's going to lead you to heaven. But there's going to be joy in that, and that's sort of, I think, a big focus of Pope Francis during his pontificate is sort of the mark of the Christian, the mark of a disciple is joy. Yeah. Even in the midst of struggles, that you can still be joyful. I think we could all point to people that we know to be holy, and usually describe them as joyful as well. Yeah. So
yeah. What's interesting to me is I feel like there's so many young people, and maybe not just people in general, who when they're asked when they what they want from the Lord is they want Him to speak as clearly as he did to you, like in your mind. They want that very clear. I want you to do this. And what's funny is that like you got that, and you're still like, yeah, I'm still gonna walk away from this for a little while. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like it's just so funny. It's a good reminder to all of us that like sometimes we think we want that, and if the Lord does that, we still probably are gonna walk away. Hopefully we won't, but like that's still very much an option for us, right? That there's it's the slow working on our heart of the Lord over time that really does the work He wants to accomplish. But even if we really want that big booming, like it's so clear, He made it so abundantly clear, and I can attest that I heard this, that even then you can still be like, thanks for the suggestion. I'm going to take that to prayer.
My agent will get back to you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I just think it's good for us to remember that. But I guess my one final follow-up question for you is, so you were talking about your siblings earlier, you were talking about your family and that kind of stuff. When you finally you talked to Father Cease, and then you talked to Father Schuster, when you finally brought it up to your family of like, this is what I want to pursue, how was that received by your parents, by your siblings? I'm assuming it was probably received differently from parents to siblings, that kind of stuff. How was that received, and how did they take that as time went on?
Yeah. The first one I told was my mother, actually. Yeah. And it was just I was home on break. I think it was maybe when I was in my last year. And I didn't it wasn't like some plan. It wasn't like like oh my God, to like work this up and just like
make some tea, sit down.
Yeah, it was not. It was just sort of like, as I remember, just sort of in the moment, just like I just like told her at the kitchen table. It was just sort of like, and like she just started crying, and you know, it was just sort of like no, not like a sadness. It was just sort of like emotion. You know, it's just like wow, and it's just like I think that's what it is. So she was the first one I told amongst my immediate family. I proceeded to tell my siblings then one by one, and sort of the reaction, long story short, was like, oh, okay. Like it was sort of like, I think it was sort of surprising. Yeah. Not like holy
it was
cow,
surprising,
but
not shocking.
Yeah,
sure.
Yep. And then my dad was the last one. I told. I told my grandparents, and I wanted to tell them kind of, you know, individually, which was a wonderful thing as well. And that's kind of when I heard, and I'll you know, my grandma had said that she had always prayed that one of her grandkids would have a religious vocation.
Oh wow!
She never told us that. Never told
That's
us
beautiful.
that. Yep. And here I was, like, so I sat down. That was more of like a sit down, like I want to tell you something, grandpa, you know. And I told my other grandpa in Bohemian, but he'd understand. Maybe because my Bohemian doesn't really exist, or because he's just like he didn't really know. Does he know what he's saying, type of thing? Yeah. So, but there was just a lot of support, which is a blessing. That's not always the case, but I had a lot of support. Like I said, it was surprising but not shocking. That's a good way of putting it. Amongst my immediate family, but my extended family as well.
Yeah, that really is beautiful. Yeah, it's good to. I think it's always good for people to hear that, you know, like it's in my mind, it'd be no different than someone being like going to their folks and saying like I think I want to propose to my girlfriend, you know, that kind of thing. I think it's like it's the same thing. It's like there's always going to be that hesitancy of, you know, how are they going to receive this? Do they think this is the right person at the right time, or, you know, what are they thinking next, kind of thing. And so I think it's good for people to hear from priests of, you know, what was it like to tell your parents that you want to be a priest, and, you know, and being willing to say, well, this is what the Lord's calling me to, and I feel confident in this and going forward. And so it's a beautiful thing to hear that. So yeah, well, thanks for sharing your story, Father Mark.
Yeah, you bet.
It's always good to get a refresher on that. It's funny that we're this deep into the podcast. We haven't had your vocation.
Well, we should do yours then as well.
Maybe we should.
I feel like it's kind of similar. I think we've all, like I said, both kind of interjected along the way, but just to sort of like, here it is, kind of signed, sealed, delivered, you know, wrapped up. There it is.
I think with mine though, we'll have to have a live fact checking thing with Rachel. Like, we'll put her on speakerphone. Do you think so?
Yeah, we do.
I'll see if she's willing to do it.
Just tell her. Okay. Never mind.
Just tell her to come in one day, and we're gonna make her breakfast or something, and then be like,
tell her
we're
going for
here.
Lunch. Yep. And the lunch will be here. So we'll bring lunch. We won't lie.
That's how I married her. I tricked her into it.
Foiled it again.
Ah, you got me. What's all my family and Father Schutz are doing here at the church? That's weird. Well, I guess while we're here.
Well, as long as we're here.
Well, Father Mark, thank you again for sharing that story. Would you mind closing us in prayer and giving us your blessing?
Not at all. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And gracious God, we thank you for all the many ways that you reveal your love to us, most importantly, and most particularly in that of the vocation, the call that you have given to each and every one of us, the call to holiness and to live out that holiness in one of the particular vocations. We ask that all those who are listening to this, all those who are discerning, may have an open heart to receive whatever that vocation may be, to not be afraid, but to be able to recognize that it comes from you and that you will help them every step of the way. We ask your blessing upon us as we persevere in our vocations, those who know those already, that we always may be holy, we always may be happy in those as well. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
May Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for your support of the podcast. But always remember that as you discern, as you listen, and possibly as you hear the Lord's voice speaking in your sleep, may you always be keeping the end in mind.